Hey there, Claire Cantro here with Spread the Well, and I wanted to do a follow-up to the video that I posted yesterday talking about your core and how the core is not our abdominals and how other sort of associations we've made just with the language that's sort of been passed around in the medical field and just from relatives and everything we sort of understand, and then we get kind of hyper fixated on a concept without sort of knowing the bigger picture. So I wanted to follow up just to make a few like clarifications, but also to show you guys a couple of things, a couple of alternatives to what you're probably doing on your own in terms of like abdominals and leg lifts and stuff like that that are contributing to probably a more dysfunctional low back system rather than what you're going for, which is a nice, strong, stable, adaptable low back system. Okay, so I alluded to just sort of that, the balance of forces and how we really truly have to first focus on restoring balance before we try to add on any sort of strength training type of thing, because the muscles that we gravitate to that need strengthening, or that we've learned from language and from things that we've understood over time, like a strong core means a good healthy low back, Peaches stuff, is that we cannot go and attack and to try to strengthen a system that is inactive, that in a nervous system, like generated activation or inactivation, that those muscles cannot turn on, right? This big dominant force is on, the more stabilizing postural endurance force is off, because of the need in that moment is survival and safety, right? So to restore the balance where you've got sort of an equal tone, that way these muscles that are typically more prone to weakness, and we want to target them in strengthening so that we can, associate a good core intrinsics at every joint with good function and injury prevention and all of that kind of stuff. But we need that balance first, right? So I alluded to the fact that, there's such a correlation that we see in the clinic of people who have low back pain or chronic low back pain, or even an acute episode of low back pain. And we come in, and as practitioners, we're wired to like do these objective testing, and oh boy, we find your glutes are weak, right? That's why you have low back pain, or your core is weak. That's why you have low back pain. And generally, that's not the case. You're presenting like that because in that moment, you're in this imbalanced, dysregulated place, right? You're in this space of protection where all of these dominant systems, the deep hip flexors, the erector spinae, some of the muscles, the hamstrings that were just designed to protect are on. And then the ones that are holding us upright, the glutes, the transversus abdominis, the diaphragm, the pelvic floor, all of these things that are postural in nature and fine-tuning in nature are off. So they're going to appear weak when they're not actually weak, they're just inactive. So creating that balance to then start building a program that targets endurance and reflexive stabilization and quick activation of that muscle group, okay? If you try to strengthen in terms of power, reps, anything, this group that's not able to activate, you are going to further the problematic imbalance, and you're going to set yourself up for injury. Okay, so yesterday I gave the example of, if I have somebody with knee pain, knee swelling, well, what's going to happen? We get this reflexive shut off of the quad. Okay, so that person comes into the clinic, they say, I have knee pain, and we do our objective testing, and here we are, this quad is weak, we need to strengthen your quad. So then what do we do, right? We're doing long arc quads, and we're doing leg raises, which if you are a practitioner, please stop those. We don't need those. Which brings me to the point of open chain versus closed chain exercise. Okay, so an open chain exercise is when my foot, if it's a lower body, when my foot is not in contact with the ground. Okay, so this, you going and doing the leg extension, the quad extension machine at the gym is an open chain exercise. Okay, for the arm, open chain would be, you know, weights and those sort of things. A closed chain exercise is when my feet are in contact with the ground or a platform or a step, or my hands are in contact with the ground in a plank position, in a push-up, or against the wall, or, you know, that sort of thing. So we are humans that have contact with the ground, right? So functional exercises generally are closed chain exercises, okay? And open chain exercises take a considerable amount of balance and fine tuning and those sort of things for them to be done well. So I find that so many patients that I see who have done poorly in a clinic where they're being run through by techs who don't understand kind of all of the nuances of therapeutic exercise and why it's important to do this before that, or why it's important to reestablish balance before you try to push strength or whatever it is. But that's problematic. So I'm trying to strengthen a muscle that literally is being nervous system driven not to turn on. And I'm trying to do that. And what I end up doing is creating a harder work for that muscle through the joints that it supports. So we end up creating tendonitis, bursitis, other problems, other movement, you know, problems for these patients. Okay, so stop doing that. So this is a good example of when it comes to your core exercises, the really significant open chain stuff, crunches, leg lifts when you're laying down, all of those things are much harder. And it's not to say that there's no place for them. So if you're a clinician and you're like, well, I do this, or if you're, you know, whatever, it's not that there's not a place for them, but for you to go rogue doing that on your own because you woke up with back pain and you know, oh my God, back pain because I have a weak core and I'm gonna start strengthening my core, you're missing a step. You're missing probably several steps. So I'm going to show you some of the like little very basic core activation type of exercises that I described in the last video. The other thing is, and we're seeing this so much, there's this whole drive to, in the physical therapy world, that's connecting into like fitness exercise, so CrossFit and Iron Tribe and all of these things. And what sort of surfaced was this, how important it is to load the body, and how instinctively when we load the body with weight, those intrinsic core muscles, so we're specifically talking about the core for the low back, but every joint has a group of intrinsic core muscles that when you do something functionally with your body, they turn on automatically. So there's so much value in this idea of weighting a system. So your core exercises you don't have to do crunches anymore. You don't have to do leg lifts and ball tosses and all this kind of stuff. Again, there's a space for that, but you doing pull-ups, you doing push-ups, you doing carrying weights or a farmer carry, or, you know, doing, squats, doing a squat with a weight out in front of you automatically turns on the muscles that are the actual core muscles that you need, okay? Now, in this video, I'm not gonna talk about the diaphragmatic breathing and the pelvic floor. I'm gonna leave certainly the pelvic floor to the specialist, but let me show you just a couple of things that if you switch out whatever you're ingrained in thinking needs to be your abdominal core exercises for some things that seem sort of basic, but that are actually quite difficult, that will be very beneficial for you. So let me make sure that you can see me. first and foremost is just, a plank. So I'm on knees and elbows, right? So a plank can look a bunch of different ways. Knees and elbows, and automatically what has to happen is my transversus abdominis, my core muscles have to engage to hold me in that spot, okay? So this right here is a core exercise that's way better and more beneficial than rogue sit-ups, okay? So plank progression, elbows and then on my toes. You can't see my toes right now, but that's what I'm on. Plank progression up into a push-up position, okay? So toes and hands, right? So this position right off the bat is a core exercise. I mean, I'm vibrating here, right? This is a hard thing. So your obliques, you can do in a side plank position, okay? You can add a little bit of mobility through that side plank. But can you recognize how this is a closed chain exercise for my obliques versus this is an open chain exercise for my obliques, okay? So those are the two differences. So people are like, just a plank, that seems so basic and easy. Well, number one, it isn't. And number two, if you can get out of your head that your abdominals and what we're like talking about as like the rectus abdominis, 6-pack is how you get a healthy low back, that's, we need to get out of that. So you can adapt these things and create some more dynamic. And what we mean by dynamic in an exercise is a plank and just holding here is a static, but a dynamic would be a mountain climber, okay? So now I've engaged my core, trying to keep a nice solid frame, but I've added a component that engages a little bit more activity in my abdominals. Okay. Here's the other thing is I alluded to what we would call like a 90-90, okay? So my hips are at 90, my knees are at 90. And the exercise is literally just to sit here. If you don't think this is hard, try it, okay? So people are like, that's it? I just sit there? Yes. And if you want to get a little bit more bang for your buck, right? We can add almost like just a little dead bug type of thing. So what I have to do is I have to cinch my belly in, okay? So when we talk about an abdominal bracing, what we're doing is we're drawing the belly in. That's not me drawing the belly in and holding my breath. It's just me almost sucking in. I'm still breathing, I'm still talking, but I've engaged that abdominal, okay? So a little dead bug type of thing. I can just do lowers. I can keep lowers. I can just do uppers, right? Okay. So that's that 90-90 type of position. I'm trying to think of what else that this whole double leg lowering type of situation that we've convinced ourselves. I don't know if you can't see, but as I get lower and lower, my back arches, okay? And that, to generate that force, means I am way over recruiting my hip flexors. When I'm trying to do an activity that should be abdominals, I'm using these very deep hip flexors, which are 9 times out of 10 a huge component of back pain. So we have this thought that we need to treat low back pain or prevent low back pain with core abdominal exercises, and we end up doing more harm than good, okay? So starting to understand these sort of things and piecing together, and when I see patients, it's almost like, wow, why are you doing this and other therapists aren't? I'm not saying that there are not other therapists doing this, but the thought process of, and this is, God bless the places that I worked and made very little money for these clinics, because I was so adamant about, I did not want my patients to come in and go straight into 45 minutes of therapeutic exercise with a tech. I wanted them to come in and get my hands on them first, get some education first, and then once we've created a little balance in the system, go and do very specific intentional exercises, okay? So, I'm trying to think of anything else that I didn't share. I'm already past 15 minutes, which means it's going to cut me off. But I will also say just a simple sit to stand squatting activity, okay, with a weight or anything out in front. So I don't even have a weight, but just me generating the force of holding my arms out in front of me and coming in and doing a butt touch, you know, I fell, it's an unstable surface. So stuff like that. Speaking of unstable surfaces, getting on a BOSU. So I will encourage patients, okay, if you are just absolutely determined to do some free weights with your arms, well, then I want you to stand on a BOSU. I want you to stand on an uneven surface. I want you to bend the legs a little bit. I want you to engage the abs as you're doing these different exercises, okay? So build your abdominal core program into the things that you're already doing in a more functional way, okay? That is how you actually create stability in your low back or in any joint. And the other important thing is that, you know, stability in the sense of like, oh my God, doesn't move, doesn't navigate out of this one stable position is also not the goal, right? In our life, we have the goal is this level of reflexive stabilization. So if I go to move a certain way, that my body can predict how to brace in that pattern. So if some unexpected movement pattern occurs, that I'm prepared for that, okay? There's no amount of abs that's going to prevent that, right? You've got to do, you've got to create balance first, and then you start working on reflexive training of those good intrinsic muscles, okay? And that happens not with sit-ups and leg lifts. Okay, peace.